I am Janelle MacKenzie, and I will be presenting on our paper using psychophysiological data to facilitate reflective conversations with children about their player experience. Video games are a ubiquitous part of children's lives. However, today there is still limited research on children's player experience. In addition, research has often been conducted on children instead of with children, and there has been a recent call to have children's voices an integral part of research about them. When conducting research with children, such as with interview studies, it is important that children are afforded opportunities to use their current verbal skills to the best of their ability. Psychophysiological assessment incorporates the measurement of physiological signals to help understand people's emotional and affective states, and we posited that utilising children's psychophysiological data in interviews could be an effective method to help understand their player experience. In light of this previous research, in our study, we attempted to implement a biofeedback system that would synchronously display the child's psychophysiological data, gameplay footage, and webcam footage, which would allow us to use the children's psychophysiological data as prompts in retrospective interviews about their player experience. Therefore, the main goal of our study was to determine the value of a biofeedback system for centering children's voices in player experience research. To address this goal, we posed 3 research questions. The first one focused on identifying if the biofeedback system could scaffold children's reflections about their player experiences and identifying any interesting insights. The second one focused on the limitations of this research, and the third one focused on the key factors that researchers could consider in the future. In this study, we asked child participants to come into our lab and play 2 video games whilst their psychophysiological data was collected. Facial expressions were collected via a webcam placed on top of the computer monitor. An eye tracker was placed along the bottom of the monitor. Heart rate was collected via an ear clip collecting a PPG signal, and GSR was collected via electrodes placed on the child's forearm. The 2 games that the children were asked to play for 20 minutes each were Lego Builder's Journey, which is a puzzle-based game with levels to complete, and Rocket League, in which the children drove cars to play soccer. 1 to 4 weeks after the children came into the lab and played the 2 video games whilst having their psychophysiological data collected, we conducted retrospective interviews with the children, primarily via Zoom. We pre-selected key moments of interest, such as when their heart rate went up or responses to in-game events. We displayed it to them in this biofeedback system displayed here. The children could see the video game replay, their webcam footage of their facial responses, as well as the signals of interest, such as their heart rate or their facial expressions. The full sample comprised of 68 participants who ranged in age from 7 years to 13 years, with just over half being boys and just over 1/3 playing video games daily. For the retrospective interviews, we analysed the data from a subsample of 35 participants in which we tried to approximate the same proportions of age, gender, and gameplay experience. We analysed this data using template analysis, a form of thematic analysis, which allowed us to have a hierarchy of codes and themes. We analysed the transcripts for the moments when the children were shown their psychophysiological data in a biofeedback system in which they provided a response. 7 themes were identified for Rocket League, with many descriptions regarding scoring goals by those who had the skills to score goals, but some children did not score goals, and many of these descriptions were about their attempts at making moves or attempts at goals in the game. Under each theme, we coded for both the feelings and emotions described, as well as the thoughts which captured the context or the what was it about those moments that the children explained had contributed to their experience. The descriptions provided by the children really varied. They range from basic descriptions of being really happy because they scored a goal, to describing thoughts that they were having, such as feeling like they had a proposition to fulfill, which for this 11-year-old boy was in response to a GSR peak. There were also descriptions of behaviours when the children were doing things other than trying to win a match. For Lego Builder's journey, there were 5 themes identified through the template analysis. A lot of the descriptions were regarding difficulty solving the puzzle, as well as success when solving the puzzle. Once again, the hierarchical nature of the template analysis allowed us to identify both the feelings and emotions that were typically identified under each theme, as well as the thoughts which provided the context for why in these moments the children were having these feelings and emotions. There were some children that provided some rather detailed descriptions of their player experiences. For example, within the difficulty solving the puzzle theme within Lego Builder's journey, a 12-year-old girl was shown some of her heart rate data and explained her experience as feeling annoyed and confused because she felt like she'd literally tried every combination ever and it still wasn't working. She then went on to describe some of the self-talk that she was having. There were other children that provided less detailed responses, such as an 11-year-old boy showing his GSR data who simply said, "I got to the other dude and so I was like, yeah." Even though Rocket League and Lego Builder's Journey were of 2 different styles, there were some similarities in the positive affective responses, such as feeling happy or excited in response to the psychophysiological prompts. So for both games, challenge that then resulted in success often elicited these positive responses, as well as moments of feeling proud of the skills they demonstrated. Negative affective responses, such as feeling sad or frustrated, occurred across both games when there was a lack of success, when there was a perception that future opportunities to do better may not arise, and when they felt like they simply would not be able to overcome the challenge they were being faced with. In utilising the biofeedback system, our participants more readily understood and reported on facial expression data, then heart rate data, and then GSR data. This is interesting as it is in line with the perceived ease of collection of this data, as well as the perceived invasiveness of these sensors as reported by the children. Our study identified that psychophysiological data can be a valuable tool for discussing children's player experience to garner interesting insights about how they were feeling and why they were feeling that way when playing video games. This can be of value to researchers as well as anybody else interested in children's player experience. Utilisation of our suggested method should be considered in light of the future improvements suggested.